Welcome back. As the nation prepares to mark 20 years since the 9/11 attacks, families who lost loved ones on that day are still left with burning questions. 2 decades later, some of them haven't given up the fight for answers. Terry Strada is the national chair for the 9/11 Families and Survivors United for Justice Against Terrorism organization. She joins us now. Welcome to Prime.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And first of all, just want to start out with our condolences for your loss. It must be a very difficult day for you every year. I understand you spoke to your husband, Tom, on the phone that day. He was inside the plane that hit the North Tower. Can you tell us about that conversation?
He was actually inside the North Tower. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. He was on the 104th floor of the North Tower when the plane hit. And that's when he called me. He was able to get a phone call out and said that a plane had hit the building. This was before it was on the television set, so it must have been moments after. And it was just a very, very panicked phone call. The noise and the commotion that I heard in the background and the fear that I could hear in his voice and in the people surrounding him, he said that there was a lot of smoke, that it was really bad, and that they were going to go to the stairwell and try to get out.
It's been 20 years, 4 administrations later. Have you gotten any answers?
Not very many. We have been involved in a lawsuit against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the last 19 years. We filed it in 2002. And in that lawsuit, we filed a subpoena against the Department of Justice to produce documents. And they have not cooperated very much. They've produced some things, but mostly they have overly classified. They've rubber-stamped state secrets, and they've also refused to even look through files. So there's a lot of evidence that our U.S. government holds in regards to the kingdom and the role that they played in the attacks of September 11th, aiding and abetting and facilitating the attacks. And that is what we are fighting for right now. And President Biden signed an executive order last week with a comprehensive declassification process that we are hoping that tomorrow we're going to see some very important documents declassified to the greatest extent possible.
And realistically, do you have confidence that you'll get the answers you want in these documents, that they'll yield any of the results that you've been looking for?
Yes, I am. I am confident that we are going to start to have many, many more answers to this puzzle of this support network that was put in place by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia prior to the attacks in order to meet and greet the first 2 hijackers, if not all of the hijackers, and learn a lot more about how the money was transferred to these hijackers within their organization. There's so much to learn because, especially now with Al-Qaeda back on the rise in Afghanistan, we need to shut down this pipeline of money that supports Al-Qaeda, that supports these terrorists that vow to kill and destroy Americans.
And when you say you want President Biden now to the fourth administration now, that you want him to hold the Saudis accountable, what do you mean by that?
Well, we are in a lawsuit against them. Everything is under protective order. That is why the media has not been able to report on this over the past several years. So what we want when we say to hold them accountable is that our evidence to be presented, all of the evidence that we're trying to collect, allow them to have their say and see what happens in the courtroom. Then if they are found guilty, they should be punished accordingly. And this country needs to take terrorism financing way more important than they do. They need to really get tough on it. There needs to be consequences, serious consequences, because we need to shut down this pipeline of money.
And obviously this relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, the terror attacks didn't deter it. Saudi Arabia is probably our number 1, number 2 ally in the Middle East. We invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. Saudi Arabia still has a friendly relationship with every administration since September 11th.
Yeah, a little too friendly, if you ask me. They should only be a strategic partner. They are not to be trusted. Clearly, when this reports come out that they have fought us so vehemently against for years, they've used high-priced PR firms, high-priced media firms. They try to do everything. They play nasty. They bribe people. They threaten people. They threaten our country. They threatened economic warfare if we even tried to bring them into a courtroom, rather than face the evidence. It's really important that we rip this Band-Aid off and that we see how devious and how horrible they were in setting up this network and financially supporting these hijackers, these Islamist terrorists, that murdered 3,000, nearly 3,000 on American soil. Pensacola, Pulse, Boston Marathon, you name it, they've got their hand in a lot of these terrorist attacks.
And finally, before I let you go, you've also been responsible for pushing through some legislation. What have you accomplished in that realm?
Well, we accomplished the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act. That was called JASTA, and that was during President Obama's administration. He vetoed it. The Congress came back and overrode his veto overwhelmingly. And with that, we were then able to bring the Saudis into the courtroom and have them not be dismissed on sovereign immunity any longer. The courts were misinterpreting the law. They were allowing them to be dismissed on sovereign immunity. No one is entitled to sovereign immunity if they're involved in a terrorist attack. So we accomplished that. Then the September 11th Transparency Act was introduced on August 5th. And this is what got us to the executive order that this president announced last week. He used the same language that was in that Transparency Act and is now mandating this full declassification review of all the documents.
Well, I know you have been working tirelessly for 20 years now. We appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And new development.